My mom demanded I pay $15,000 for my sister's wedding. When I refused, she stole my credit card and drained my savings, but I couldn't stop laughing because she had no idea what was coming next. See, what my family didn't know was that I'd been quietly building something they couldn't touch. While they saw me as the forgettable middle child who worked long hours and kept his head down, I'd actually been strategically positioning myself in ways they never bothered to notice. My job at the engineering firm wasn't just any job. I was a senior project manager specializing in financial risk assessment for corporate clients. I made $95,000 a year, had connections throughout the legal and financial sectors, and most importantly, I understood exactly how fraud investigations worked because I'd consulted on dozens of them. The theft happened on a Thursday night. Mom used her spare key to break into my apartment while I was sleeping and stole my credit card from my desk drawer. By Friday morning, she'd racked up $14,847 in wedding expenses, venue deposits, catering, photography, the works. When I saw the charges, instead of panicking like she expected, I started documenting everything with the methodical precision of someone who'd spent years building fraud cases for Fortune 500 companies. First step was security footage. My building manager, Janet, knew me well from my 2 years as a reliable tenant who always paid early. When I explained the situation professionally, showing her my formal fraud report and bank statements, she immediately provided the building security recordings. There was Mom, clear as day, sneaking into my place with her purse, leaving 43 minutes later. The timestamp matched perfectly with the first fraudulent charge. But here's where my professional background became crucial. Most people would have just called the police and hoped for the best. I called my network. James Harrison, a white-collar crime attorney I'd worked with on 3 major corporate cases, agreed to consult immediately. Rebecca Foster, a forensic accountant who specialized in family financial fraud, offered her services. Detective Mike Russo from the Financial Crimes Unit knew my work from previous corporate investigations and fast-tracked my case. "This is textbook criminal fraud," James told me during our Saturday morning consultation at his downtown office. Security footage, matching timestamps, prior demand for the exact amount, premeditated access to secure location. Your mother just committed multiple felonies with perfect documentation. Rebecca's analysis was even more damaging. After reviewing the transaction patterns, she discovered this wasn't Mom's first rodeo. "Your credit report shows 3 previous instances of suspicious activity over the past 2 years, she explained, pointing to her laptop screen. "Someone with access to your personal information has been testing these waters. Small charges that were reversed, failed attempts to open accounts in your name. This was a planned escalation. By Monday morning, I had a complete prosecution package ready. Bank statements, security footage, expert financial analysis, and a timeline that would make any prosecutor salivate. But I also had something else, leverage they couldn't see coming. My grandfather's trust fund contained a forfeiture clause that I'd helped him draft during my business law courses. Any beneficiary convicted of financial crimes against family members would lose their entire inheritance, redistributed to the remaining heirs. Mom's share was $180,000. Audrey's portion was $45,000. As secondary trustee, I had the authority to enforce this clause the moment their criminal convictions became final. When Detective Russo called Mom for questioning, she immediately hired Richard Voss, a family law attorney who clearly didn't understand the scope of what he was dealing with. His first settlement offer was laughable. A 12-month payment plan for stolen money, as if this were some kind of civil dispute instead of multiple felonies with ironclad evidence. "Your client committed premeditated fraud with video evidence," I told Voss during our phone conversation. "She's facing 2 to 5 years in federal prison for identity theft, plus state charges for burglary and fraud. This isn't a family misunderstanding. It's a criminal case with professional-grade documentation." The real shock came when Peter, Audrey's fiancé, reached out directly. He was a decent guy who'd been completely manipulated by both women. During our coffee meeting, he revealed the true scope of their conspiracy. This wasn't just Mom stealing my card. It was a months-long plan that Audrey had helped orchestrate. "She mapped out your apartment during that visit in February," Peter explained, showing me screenshots of text messages between Mom and Audrey. Your sister identified where you kept your financial documents, your daily routines, even which nights you took sleeping medication. They planned this like a professional operation. The text messages were devastating. Audrey writing, "Nick's too passive to actually follow through with charges. He'll fold once the wedding gets close." Mom responding, "He's always been weak. Even if he complains, what's he going to do? Call the police on family." Peter's decision to call off the wedding and provide evidence transformed the case completely. Now, we could charge Audrey as an active conspirator rather than just someone who benefited from fraud. Detective Russo was impressed with the evidence quality. "Most family fraud cases fall apart because of emotional complications," he told me. "But you've approached this like a professional investigation. We have enough evidence to convict both defendants without even going to trial." The formal charges came down on a Wednesday. Mom faced felony fraud, identity theft, and burglary charges. Audrey was charged as an accomplice to fraud and conspiracy. Both were looking at significant prison time until the prosecutor offered a plea deal requiring full restitution, public admission of guilt, and permanent criminal records. The court hearing was everything I'd hoped for. Sitting in that courthouse, watching Mom and Audrey stand before Judge Harper in their funeral attire, I felt the satisfaction of a perfectly executed strategy. When the judge required them to allocute, to publicly confess their crimes on the record, Mom's voice was barely audible. "I entered my son's apartment without permission in the middle of the night. I took his credit card from his desk. I used it to make charges totaling $14,847 for my daughter's wedding expenses. I did this knowing he had refused to give me the money. I did this intentionally and without his consent." Audrey's confession was even more damaging. "I helped plan it. I told my mother where my brother kept his credit card. I knew the money was being taken without permission. I spent that money on my wedding, knowing it was stolen." The immediate consequences were swift. Both received 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and orders for immediate restitution of $14,847. But the long-term impacts were where my strategic planning really paid off. Within 60 days, the trust forfeiture was finalized. I received $140,000 as my share of the redistributed inheritance, plus my original $14,847 in restitution. Mom and Audrey lost their combined $225,000. Future security, money they'd been counting on for retirement and home ownership. The criminal records destroyed Audrey's employment prospects and put Mom's professional certifications at risk. The family members who'd pressured me to be the bigger person went silent once they realized the financial implications. Uncle Paul, who'd called me vindictive, stopped returning my calls after learning about the trust forfeiture. The relatives who'd sided with Mom suddenly had very different opinions about family loyalty when they realized their own inheritance shares had just increased. 6 months later, I received a call from Jennifer Walters at Cornerstone Bank. Mom and Audrey had applied for a joint $14,847 loan at 23% interest to make their court-ordered restitution payment. Their criminal records had flagged the application for verification. They were so desperate to avoid probation violations that they were willing to trap themselves in predatory debt for the next 5 years. I drove past Mom's house that evening for the first and last time since the theft. Through the windows, I could see them hunched over paperwork at the dining room table. Loan applications, budget spreadsheets, the detritus of their collapsed financial planning. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "I know you're outside. Please come in. We need to talk." Inside, the conversation was everything I'd expected. Desperate pleas for mercy, offers of payment plans I'd already rejected, and finally, the real question Mom had been avoiding. "Do you hate us?" "No," I told her honestly, standing at the threshold with my hand on the door. "I don't hate you, I just don't trust you, and I don't know if I ever will again. That's on you to fix, not me." 4 weeks later, their restitution payment hit my account on the final possible day before probation violation. I deposited it and felt the last weight of their manipulation lift from my shoulders. The additional $140,000 from the trust went straight into high-yield savings, my future security that no one could touch. Mom texts occasionally now, updates about therapy sessions, apologies that sound more genuine each time, small attempts to rebuild something between us, I sometimes respond with short, polite messages, but the distance remains. Audrey stopped reaching out entirely after her sixth unanswered apology. They gambled that I was too passive, too family-oriented, too weak to hold them accountable for theft. Instead, they discovered that underestimating someone with professional expertise, financial resources, and strategic thinking skills leads to consequences they never imagined. They tried to drown me with their entitlement and manipulation. Instead, they drowned themselves while I learned to swim in waters they'd never even seen.